Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Rank, where I climb the Online Series 12 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. Today we are using a team that I think is just one of the strongest that I've tried in the recent weeks. This is a little bit more meta standard, but it's incredibly powerful and features just some of the strongest concepts in the format at the moment. It's a dual weather team featuring both Kyogre and Torkoal, and it was built by a player called NJ11, who I've linked down in the description below. He sent this in to me and said he had a lot of good success with it recently online, and yeah, I like to mix it up between using super non-meta teams and then teams that I think are really strong in terms of learning the game and climbing the ladder with, and this is one of them. So huge thank you to him for the team. I linked his Twitter down in the description below, as well as a rental and a paste. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps below. If you enjoyed, please show support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. And question of the day, I want to know what Pokemon you think deserves a weather-based ability with us using, multiple weather-based Pokemon. One other quick shout out, by the way, I'm currently making some fun additional content at Beast Coast Pokemon, and James Beck and I are actually teaming up to do this like a low ladder challenge, and I'm actually starting up an individual series on that channel as well, where I take requests to build wacky sets and whatnot. So James and I actually just posted a team building video on it a couple of days ago. I've linked that in the description below. If you would give the channel a sub and check it out, it'd really mean a lot to me, as we're trying to build out more fun Pokemon content outside of just what we do on our individual channel. So yeah, let's get started with the team breakdown. So the general idea behind this team is, it's just Tailwind plus some of the strongest attackers in the game, right? So Tornadus is one of the best Tailwind users at the moment. You might also see Pokemon like Whimsicott used, occasionally in this slot. But Tornadus is just really good thanks to Prankster and Focus Sash, and this is a super standard set. Icy Wind here is actually a really critical move to talk about, because so much about this team is going before your opponent can, and also maximizing your turns of Tailwind, right? So Icy Wind gives you another means of speed control. This is also really handy because it breaks through Focus Sash. It can drop your opponent's speed immediately, and sometimes you don't need to go for Tailwind immediately. You can go for like Icy Wind into an attack and then Tailwind the subsequent turn. Icy Wind's also really important against opposing Tornaduses and can help you just win the Weather War or the Tailwind War immediately. So your timid max speed here just to make sure you at worst speed tie against opposing Tornaduses. Protect is mainly here, obviously, against all the fake out users in the format. This allows you to lead like something like Tornadus, Kyogre, Tornadus, Zacian with confidence, and then just double protect turn 1 to bypass any potential fake outs from things like Rillaboom or Grimmsnarl. So pretty standard Tornadus here. Kyogre is also pretty standard. It's modest instead of timid, so keep that in mind. You might be slower than some of the Kyogres you go up against, but this is really just to maximize your damage output and, yeah, do as much damage as possible, obviously. Next Pokemon here is Zacian. This is also a pretty speedy Zacian, but it's Advent rather than Jolly, and you do have some HP investment here as well. Zacian here is also rating Substitute. Sub is particularly nice because the Zacian is a little bit faster, and you have Tailwind support from Tornadus, and so with Substitute you can stall out Dynamaxes a little bit easier, and I feel like on a team like this, Play Rough isn't as essential, right? So you have room for a move like Substitute. And then Landorus on this team is also fairly standard, but do know that it's actually a lot bulkier than you might be used to. A lot of players still just like max attack, max speed, and then just run Jolly, but this is super bulky Landorus with a lot of HP, defense, and special defense investment, and you're not as speedy or as offensive on the attack end, right? But the whole idea is that you have Tailwind on this team, so you don't really need max speed, because most of the times when you're bringing Landorus, you'll probably have Tailwind set up, and against the teams in which, you're bulky enough here where it doesn't matter if you're getting outsped, and then Landorus has max airstream as well. One thing to call out here is actually U-turn. This has been a fairly common attack on Landorus throughout the years, but I feel like in this format I actually haven't seen it as much, because you want to slot in another move often over it, something like Sword Stance or Protect on the non-assault vest sets. But U-turn is really nice because it means you can lead Tornadus, Landorus, pressure with Dynamax Landorus, but also just U-turn and pivot out immediately, right? And so it gives you another way to use Landorus where it's not, as reliant on just being a good Dynamax option. Plus, Max Flutterby can be useful until some of the Pokemon in the format. Finally, you've got the Torkoal and Venusaur core, right? So Torkoal, Venusaur on this team, might seem kind of counterintuitive because it's like, okay, aren't you bringing Kyogre almost all the time? Aren't you going to reset your own weather? But first of all, Venusaur is just an incredibly powerful Pokemon between having access to Sleep Powder and then a wide variety of offensive attacks as well. So this is just timid max speed with Life Orb, just designed to try to KO your opponent as quickly as possible, and obviously set up the Vine Lash as well. You've got Torkoal here. This is the ultra bulky set, as you can see, max HP, max special defense, and bold nature, and so you kind of cover for all three ends of the spectrum, and this is the Burning Jealousy Body Press Yawn set. This is particularly good into all the physical attackers in the format, especially things like Landorus-T, Thundurus-T, and Zacian, for example, especially because you can burn them with Burning Jealousy, and being able to click Burning Jealousy if someone tries to switch in Zacian can be super strong because you just burn them immediately. the idea of having Venusaur here is, first of all, you don't actually even need to bring Torkoal into a lot of battles against a lot of like the Groudon teams. Venusaur by itself can actually operate really well, where you can go with the mode of like Tornadus, Venusaur, Zacian, Kyogre, or sometimes slot in Landorus over one of the restricteds, for example. Torkoal Venusaur is also just an incredibly powerful duel in itself, right? And against teams that don't have weather or strong ways to slow down Venusaur, you can actually just lead Torkoal Venusaur immediately and then close out the games with Kyogre or Zacian. So I feel like with, my time with this team, it's super flexible. That's one of the reasons why I think it's really strong. But Tornadus plus, Kyogre, Zacian, Venusaur, or Landorus is always a good lead. Torkoal Venusaur can work depending on the right matchup with Kyogre and Zacian in the back. So much about Venusaur is just making sure you, get 1 or 2 big knockouts with it and set up Vine Lash for late game residual damage. So yeah, the team, I think, in terms of Pokemon, nothing really too crazy here, but it's just so much sheer power, and you're using really just some of the strongest Pokemon in the format combined. And Venusaur on these teams, it's not like super common. You often see something like Kartana instead, and then the Torkoal is like an Incineroar instead, right? But this just gives you a completely different mode that you can operate with. So yeah, that's going to be it for the team. Let's get into the battles. Okay, getting into this one, and it's just going to be Zacian Kyogre here, but no Tailwind. Instead, Kartana, Regieleki, Landorus, and Grimmsnarl. Grimm is pretty interesting to see here. I'm curious if, it's just the classic dual screens variant. Given them having Kyogre and Zacian, I mean, setting up Tailwind here seems appropriate from Tornadus. I do have to worry about speed control from Grimm, and I'm trying to figure out what the best max option is. Because Torkoal Venusaur here is actually really solid as well. The main thing this has to be careful about is going to be either like Landorus max airstreaming or Kyogre changing the weather, and then potentially even maxing on us. Maybe we don't need to go Tailwind then. The problem is if I don't go with Tailwind, my opponent can just change the weather and Venusaur becomes way less effective. Like, Kyogre under Tailwind here looks really powerful. Okay. I'm down for something like a Tornadus plus Venusaur lead. Do I really just not bring Torkoal, though? Feels a little bit odd. Tornadus, Kyogre, Zacian. I think I'm going to go with Landorus here. It's mainly the Grimmsnarl that scares me, but I don't think that should actually dissuade me that much from breeding Torkoal Venusaur. I'm just like, get a little bit nervous about the idea of being Torkoal Venusaur, since the Venusaur here doesn't really have too much bulk. And so if they play with like Landorus, like Landorus Zacian lead, or Landorus plus something, and then the potential of switching in Kyogre turn 1, I think that can be super bad for that combination. But they're going to go with Grimmsnarl here, plus a Regieleki. Okay. I actually think this is super okay. The main thing is what a Regieleki wants to do here. Like, do you actually Dynamax, right? Because I could obviously pivot Kyogre out at the moment. I have Protect on Tornadus, so we could Protect just to scout out for a potential, like, Fake Out on the Grimmsnarl. Because if they do have Fake Out, it's actually quite annoying here. And something like going for Protect here and then switching out into Landorus Therian form is really consistent, in my opinion. A Regieleki here could opt to, like, hard switch immediately, but it looks like it's going to stay in. Okay. The idea behind leading Tornadus plus Kyogre is it's like a lot of offensive pressure immediately, right? My opponent's going to be probably feel pressure to like respond to that immediately, because otherwise like a Kyogre Water Spout here would really hurt, right? Would have loved to see a Regieleki Dynamax. They're not going to go for that. It is Trick. Okay. And then Rising Voltage. So they're probably trying to Trick to take away Focus Sash. It could be Trick going on to Landorus now, so I'm actually going to click Tailwind here, and I'm not going to Dynamax Landorus here, because I essentially want to bait out a Trick, and I want to ideally Dynamax whatever doesn't get tricked, right? Could be Trick Lagging Tail as well, just to get rid of Sash, but normally when you see Trick, you expect Eject Button. Actually, Eject Button is the least common out of the 3. I'd expect Iron Tail or Iron Ball or Lagging Tail. And it's really gone back and forth. Like, I feel like it's been Iron Ball for a long time just because you can get the immediate speed drop, but a lot of high-level players have actually moved towards using Lagging Tail. Which is funny because Lagging Tail was used kind of earlier on with Grimmsnarls, but I feel like it's just a little bit harder to execute, but if you get it onto your opponent's Maxmon, it can give you such a major advantage. Now, this turn's interesting because they actually max the Regieleki here, which I didn't really expect. Okay, so Trick's going to come out once again. We do get Tailwind up now. Grimm is going to trick the Landorus here. Okay. Wow. You have got to be kidding me. It's the ring target. Well, that's a first. I've actually like seen that combination before, but yeah, that is super interesting. Now, normally you would think, hey, this is super bad, but in reality, you just took away Assault Vest, right? So even though that turn itself was obviously not ideal, Grimmsnarl now can only really go for attacks, right? And I have speed control. And my opponent committed a Dynamax to Lecky, which is relatively frail here. So this turn, I don't really mind just clicking Icy Wind into Water Spout. Icy Wind covers for switch-ins. Hurricane's a little bit more consistent damage-wise, and we know Lecky's not Assault Vest here, but it could mean like a Lecky Protect or Max Guard, and then Grimm tries to Spirit Break me here, and I'm nervous it survives Water Spout and Rain. Oh, actually, it has Assault Vest here, so it'll definitely survive, right? So the question here is, do I think a Lecky is going to protect this turn, essentially? I could max the Kyogre as well. I'm not sure a Lecky can even survive Water Spout here, so... Okay, I'm gonna just Hurricane Grimm then in Water Spout. This might just pick up a double knockout. We could even max Tornadus from this position, by the way. Okay, they're not gonna bother max guarding a Lecky here, which is a good play on their end. We get the Confusion here. I don't really care that much about the Confusion, because I think Spout should finish it off from this range anyway. That's just a double KO. Beautiful. I mean, I think this is a great example of my opponent like going all in to knock out one Pokemon, but, you know, is that trade actually worth it? The answer, you know, looks like no, right? Because they committed so many resources to get a knockout onto something that didn't Dynamax, and that's part of the reason why I didn't want to Dynamax Landorus. My opponent had already revealed Trick, right? But it's funny because I was talking about the common items, whether it be Iron Ball or Lagging Tail or sometimes Eject Button. Yeah, that was actually the ring target, right? And so that's a very specific combination so that you can enable your Regieleki. But you can see now my opponent has nothing for Kyogre at the moment, right? And so this game is basically over, right? We had speed control. That's why Tornadus is so big in this matchup, right? We have such similar Pokemon. But all I have to do is just outspeed my opponent, and they don't really have great resistances or immunities to Kyogre. So their best way to beat Kyogre really be with like speed control from Grimmsnarl, whether it be Thunder Wave or you know, something like Scary Face or Assault Vest Kartana if that's what you have. So 2 turns of Tailwind left. Either of these could be sashed. I can still just Water Spout here really safely. Like, I'm actually down to Dynamax the Tornadus here, and just Airstream. Yeah, I'm down to target the Zacian here, because Zacian might be bulky enough to survive, and regular Landorus is not going to do anything for my opponent here. Yeah, they actually just end up forfeiting. So, even though the Regieleki, like, you know, ring target stuff was kind of cute, like, in the end, it was actually totally okay with me because we got Tornadus and Kyogre out into a perfect position, right? And once again, that's like why Tornogre is such an impressive combination in this format because, like, it can snowball the game so quickly. A well-played Kyogre really can just demolish so many teams, right? My opponent really didn't have any ways to stop Kyogre there after they had committed the trick. And that's one of the big things about using trick-reliant strategies in the format, right? Like, if you steal when it's Assault Vest, it can actually be really detrimental for you because it essentially makes one of your Pokemon, like, completely useless outside of just attacking, right? And Grimmsnarl, you know, it can be offensive and can use good attacks like Spirit Break or Foul Play or whatever, but the main, you know, use of Grimmsnarl for most teams is to get these prankster attacks, right? And so if we didn't have Assault Vest there, then Grimmsnarl there most likely has some way for speed control, and then it's actually a completely different game, right? Because yes, I have Tailwind, but then you can just go for like a Scary Face or a Thunder Wave onto the Kyogre slot, and then you can just Max Lightning everything. So then, you know, having to take the Assault Vest specifically put them into a really bad position, that is one of the things you have to consider risk versus reward wise when you use Trick every time. But yeah, definitely did not expect to see the ring target there, so that was really cool. But yeah, let's look for another. All right, this is just Rinya Sun, which should be interesting. Because we have to go up against Charizard, and that's pretty scary. How do I slot in? What do I want here? Like, I have to worry about Grimm shenanigans in general. AV Landorus should be really good. It could just be Tornogre, Zacian, Landorus, which isn't the most exciting because I want to bring Torkoal or Venusaur. I guess the question is, do I actually need Tornadus? Because I can bring Venusaur over something, right? But Tailwind here seems fairly valuable. I feel like Tornadus Landorus here is just strong, honestly. I do have to be a little bit careful about Gastrodon as the end game. The thing is, if we eliminate Charizard, Venusaur is really good in this one. Because surely my opponent's going to bring Groudon, right? And they don't have any grass Pokemon. There's also a chance they... Like, I'm actually kind of down to drop Zacian in this one, I think. And bring Venusaur. The logic here is if they don't lead something like Charizard immediately, I can actually max the... If they don't bring Charizard, I can max the Venusaur in this matchup. And if they do bring Charizard, I just use Landorus to take care of it early. And then regular Venusaur still has value here because of... Sleep Powder and Leaf Storm into Gastrodon. Because I think if you're my opponent, you can bring 5 of the 6 Pokemon. I don't think you bring Incineroar, but I think everything else is pretty strong here, so it's a question of who you actually want to drop. And they actually go with Grim and Gastrodon immediately. Okay. So this was the idea behind bringing Venusaur, because this implies Groudon Zacian in the back, right? If you have Groudon Zacian in the back, that means you do not have Charizard, which means Venusaur suddenly is a much stronger max option. I expect Yawn turn 1. So weirdly enough, I don't even want to switch here. I'm actually down to just click Hurricane into Grimmsnarl and Earthquake here. I do have U-turn, but I don't think I want to U-turn out and get hit by a Yawn. And I think Grim now just sets up screens. But basically, like, yeah, they go for Reflect. That's fine. And even if I have Ice Beam, they go for Ice Beam here, it's fine. We miss Hurricane, which is a little unfortunate because it would have been Hurricane pre-Light Screen, but it's okay. Hurricane's just obviously not the most reliable outside of rain. Yep, and they go for Yawn. So basically, like, the theory here is I'm just going to target around Gastrodon for now, because I've got the Venusaur, so I can Hurricane now and then just U-turn out. U-turn is really nice here to get some free damage on the way out as well. I expect Grim to set up Light Screen now. Yep. Should be likely dual screens then, given that. Hitting the Hurricanes would have been pretty nice, because Grimmsnar should have fainted, I think, if we connected on both of those, but I think the odds, you know, missing both aren't even that low, so can't complain too much there. But now I can go into Venusaur. The thing is, I expect Yawn to go off into the Landorus slot, which is then kind of awkward for me going into the next turn. Yeah, exactly. It's just a never-ending sleep cycle, right? There is a crazy world in which I just say, you know what, I'm just going to max Venusaur and just Vine Lash here anyway. Because trading Venusaur here is actually worth it if it means I actually KO Gastrodon. So this is actually a really big turn. I don't think I need a Tailwind quite yet either. Because they're just going to keep clicking Yawn with Gastrodon. As crazy as this seems, I'm actually going to max. And basically the reason for this is because I expect Zacian plus Groudon in the back for my opponent, right? So if you're Zacian plus Groudon and I actually one-shot Gastrodon here, then it opens the path for Kyogre, and I can win the Weather War relatively quickly as well. And I have Landorus for Intimidate against both physical attackers. Kyogre's going to be excellent into both of them, and I'll have Tailwind support. So I'm actually willing to push the max button here and just go for it. Yep, and they don't protect Gastrodon. And the logic there is they always expect me to switch out, right? But the thing is now I'm pretty close to a double KO. So yes, Venusaur is going to fall asleep, but I actually think that's worth it. The thing is, even if Gastrodon protected there, I think it would have been okay, but sometimes to break through this like Yawn cycling, you have to just attack, right? The problem for me here is that, you know, the thing is, like, Tornadus actually isn't that bad into the Gastrodon slot, because I can have Hurricane, but as you can see, my luck with hitting Hurricane so far has not been amazing, right? Does Vine Lash KO? I don't think it does. Okay, that's fine, though. It means my opponent doesn't get 2 free switch-ins immediately. So I think you have to go into Zacian now, to which then I'm just going to click Tailwind with Tornadus. They'll bring out Groudon. I'll win the Weather Ward. You should Behemoth Blade into the Venusaur slot. I don't think I want to switch Venusaur out here, though. I think I just sacrifice it. Yeah, so let's get Tailwind up. And let's just Vine Lash here. Well, actually, in the off chance they actually let me get an attack off, I guess I'll Quake. But one of the things is I find Vinelash super strong in this matchup because my opponent doesn't like really have great ways to heal up, and I'm assuming it's Assault Vest Groudon in the back. But if I win the Weather War and get Kyogre out in a perfect position, then I can just click Water Spout, right? Okay, no switches, no protects, that makes sense. Just Spirit Break, Tornadus, Blade into Venusaur here, but now I get Tailwind up, which is what I'm looking for. We're speaking to Blade. Okay. And they actually target Tornadus, which is interesting. Like, I get what they're going for, but now if I actually just wake up next turn, I think they just immediately lose the game. So I'm okay with that. Spirit Break, Grim faints now, Groudon comes out. I can bring Kyogre, but I'll lose the Weather War, so it's correct to go into Landorus first and get the Intimidate onto both of the physical attackers. The thing is with Landorus, I can also just Earthquake the Zacian, right? So, yeah. I think this game was really interesting because, you know, you normally don't want to stay in when you've gotten hit by Yawn, but this is the amount of pressure that something like a Max Venusaur can apply, right? And in the end, I dropped Zacian in this matchup, but like Zacian into a team that has Gastrodon plus Groudon in the back plus Charizard doesn't feel great, right? So sometimes you should be willing to just drop Zacian because there are a fair amount of teams that have a good matchup into it. I think it's still very strong here, but the whole logic here is that, yeah, like Landorus covers for Charizard, right? And if they don't bring Charizard, Venusaur is excellent into the rest of the team here. So we have 3 turns of Tailwind. I just intimidated both of these. We still got 2 turns of Vinelash. They have Reflect up, which obviously is a little bit scary, but we're looking to get the free switch into Kyogre at this point. U-turn here into Groudon is pretty safe, but it could mean a Behemoth Blade onto the Landorus slot. At this point, they should attack with both Pokemon, in my opinion, so I'm also interested in the idea of just clicking Earthquake here, honestly. Because it gives me a free switch in if they, yeah. I think Earthquake and Flare here is fine. The thing is, U-turn's interesting for cycling Intimidates, but what I don't want to do is, like, switch Landorus out, bring in Kyogre, and then get crit by something. Because I want to end the game with Water Spout, ideally, as well, is the thing. And now that we've gotten rid of Gastrodon earlier on this game, right, we've positioned Kyogre to just ideally end the game with the Water Spout. And if Venusaur wakes up here, the game should just be over as well. Nice. Cool, we get the Flare off into the Zacian slot. Okay, he's going to survive, but Earthquake's going to finish it off at this point. Yeah. That's why I thought it was a little bit risky for my opponent to target the Tornado slot the way they did, because you risk a 1-turn wake up just losing you the game immediately. And they just go for Quake. Perfect. Okay, and Venusaur survives that as well. Beautiful. So, I assume they're Assault Vest Groudon here, like, but even if they weren't, I think we'd be fine in this endgame. The thing about Assault Vest Groudon is it's so powerful in this format, but a single Intimidate greatly decreases its damage output, right? So we were able to get that quick Intimidate off onto it. And you can see, like, Landorus was actually really valuable for us here, even as a non-max option, which was awesome. There's no more turns of Violence. Oh, there's still one more turn. Yeah, they are indeed dual screens. At this point, like, Landorus should actually win, so I'm down to U-turn to cycle in another Intimidate. Question is, like, whether or not I want to Leaf Storm or Sleep Powder here. I'm okay going for Sleep Powder here, because Leaf Storm doesn't really do that much anyway right now, especially with the special defense boost. And they actually just end up forfeiting. Yeah, the thing is, like, it's nearly impossible for Dynamax Groudon at -1 to come back from that position. So, yeah. I think, like, Venusaur was super nice for us in this one, because it was able to apply a lot of offensive pressure into really my opponent's entire team. And I think, yeah, if I had switched Venusaur out the turn that Yawn happened, I would just have to play through another couple of turns where I keep having to deal with this, like, Yawn cycling. I think that's really annoying. So, yeah. Glad to feature how, like, Venusaur can slot into this mode, because I think when you look at this team, you know, Kyogre, Venusaur, Tornadus, Torkoal, there's a lot going on, but it goes to show that you don't necessarily need to bring Torkoal just to enable the Venusaur on the team here. So, yeah, let's look for one final battle. Last one here, and it is Lunala Groudon. Okay, Lunadon. You know, this is one of my favorite archetypes. It's definitely an interesting one, I think. It's not really great for Torkoal, Venusaur. Torkoal's really weak here into so many of my opponent's Mons. I don't really want to set up the Sun for them either, so I think it's just Torn Ogre, Zacian, Kyogre, but I could slot in Venusaur potentially. I think I'm down for, like, Tornadus Landorus. Well, it could be like we just drop Zacian again is the thing, but Behemoth Blade here is really strong, I think. Especially into Venusaur. And if I want to bring Landorus and Kyogre, like, in this matchup, I think both maxing Landorus or Kyogre is really powerful. The strength of bringing something like Torkoal here, by the way, would be, like, applying pressure with Yawn onto their side. Because, like, Lunala could angle for Trick Room here, and that's pretty scary. And it's like, if they were to set up Trick Room, then Torkoal could just, like, yawn things under Trick Room and give them a lot of trouble here. So, yeah. I think, out of all the games, like, I don't know, the last one I didn't really want to bring Torkoal. I think the first game against Zacian Ogre, maybe I could make an argument for it. But sometimes it's just not the best matchup for it. Okay, Incineroar plus Venusaur. So with this lead, I obviously have to worry about a quick switch out into Groudon, and then you just fish for a Sleep Powder. I really have to be careful about weakness policy Venusaur, so I want to keep that in mind. Like, I'm definitely not Airstreaming here. If we were wider, maybe I'd consider it, but because we're not, I choose not to. Don't really know how I want to play out turn 1, though, is the thing. Kyogre Zacian in the back. Like, I think Incin switching to Groudon here works, but you could also just fake out or Parting Shot on turn 1. Tornadus could max Hailstorm. But I don't want to commit my max this early on, especially when they don't have that much offensive pressure on turn 1. So I'm actually down to just click Hurricane and Earthquake. Actually, maybe I want a U-turn here. Yeah. I think U-turn is really nice for pivoting. Especially with this team. Okay, they are going to commit the max to Venusaur. What do I expect? I don't know, fake out Torn. Could also just be Parting Shot immediately. I'm okay with this. The main thing is basically, like, I want to play around Policy Venusaur. I think Policy Venusaur is the strongest set on a lot of the Lunala Groudon teams right now. And, you know, they're normally pretty bulky as well. So, okay. Yeah, they don't switch out Incineroar either, so they're just going to go for, like, a Parting Shot. Oh my gosh. That was a crit. And Confusion. Oh my gosh. That was... Like, the odds of that are so slim, right? We get crit Confusion, and just even hitting Hurricane alone is a miracle outside of Rain, as you can see. I'm down to switch out into Zacian now, I think. Yeah, the idea of Hurricane there is just to get some, like, damage on the board if I can get it, but we're lucky enough to get a crit and a Confusion, which is pretty crazy. If Venusaur, I mean, if Incin hits itself in Confusion, it actually just faints here. Which is super high roll. Did you just go for Vine Lash? Okay. That really makes me... I was going to say I think they're Policy, but that looked like Life Orb damage to me. Or as a crit. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, crit for a crit. I can't complain about that. Incin does get an attack off. Cool. And they Parting Shot into Zacian. Yep, good play. That's also why I don't want to max Landorus, right? I don't want it to just eat up 2 attack drops immediately to start the game. And the expectation there is that they're Shuka Berry, right? So with that, then even if I were to max Landorus and Quake there, it wouldn't be a KO, especially with Intimidate. Okay, they are going to bring out Lunala. Lunala is really bad to see, I think, because the thing is now what they can do is just set up Trick Room on me. Now, Zacian does have Behemoth Blade pressure onto Venusaur. This turn's really tricky, I think. I still want to, like, risk activating Policy on Venusaur, but it could be worth it if I just go for Hurricane plus Behemoth Blade onto it. I don't think I'm going to... I can't deny Trick Room here anyway, right? So I'm just going to target down the Venusaur slot. They could just max guard Trick Room. Okay, they're going to go for the Groudon switch in play. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, no, the Incin switch in play. Okay. Fine by me. I'm definitely not knocking out Venusaur now, but it also means you didn't get Trick Room up, and I can play towards late game Dynamax Landorus Therian at this point. Okay. I am mainly just curious if you are weakness policy here, but we'll see if Hurricane even connects in the first place. Yeah, it's still so much damage on a Venusaur. Hurricane is going to miss. Okay, that's fine. Max Ooze. Okay. That shouldn't KO me, but with Vine Lash, I faint after next turn. The thing is, another Blade does just KO Venusaur here, though. I'm glad that, like, these games have highlighted the inconsistency of Hurricane, by the way, because it's not a move you should rely on hitting, right? I'm going for it mainly because I think in a lot of these situations, it's just, I don't really have anything better to go for. This turn's interesting because it's like, Tornadus guarantee feints after Vine Lash, right? So you could just choose to ignore it. I have to be careful about losing the Weather War here. And I want to get Tailwind up ideally, because otherwise Venusaur can Sleep Powder me. So I'm actually down to switch Tornadus out into Landorus right now. I guess you could just fake out Zacian, though. I would Vine Lash Tornadus here. Okay, I'm actually going to stay in with both. And the logic here is, even if I lose both to a Fake Out plus Vine Lash combo, and they switch. Okay, that is super good for us, in my opinion. Nice. Groudon comes out. Yep. Okay. Yeah, the logic here is, they didn't even go for Fake Out, so I'm sure they were expecting me to maybe make a switch there, but I was, expecting, okay, Fake Out goes into the 1 or 2 slots. If you Fake Out Tornadus, Behemoth Blade KOs Venusaur, right? And then I survive after the residual. If you target Zacian, it means I get Tailwind up. And having one of the two is good enough for me in this endgame, because I've stalled out my opponent's Dynamax fully now. Okay. Yeah, now this is perfect for us, because it's a free switch into Kyogre for me. The thing I have to be worried about, though, is a late game Trick Room for my opponent, right? Because Lunala can now set up Trick Room, and then Landorus or Groudon under Trick Room can be a huge problem for me. But the problem for my opponent is, who do you bring out right now? If you bring out Lunala, then Kyogre just has a free Water Spout this turn. And it is going to be Lunala. Ugh, the only problem is Wide Guard here now. Because what we can do is... Do I even care about Wide Guard? It's really easy to just Water Spout here and Behemoth Blade into Lunala. Because Behemoth breaks the Shadow Shield, and then Water Spout should just finish it off. So I'm down for that. If you have Wide Guard, then so be it. But it still doesn't help you that much, because then I still break Shadow Shield, and then Landorus comes in to replace Zacian. And I think their way to come back is Trick Room. So if I wanted to guarantee the knockout onto Lunala, I think I like Max Ogre there better, and then just Behemoth Blade plus Max Geyser into it, because if they set up Trick Room here, I could still lose, I think. I actually expect Lunala to survive based off how little I did there. Let's see. Nah, Max Water Spout's just so strong. Yeah. That was a crit. I actually think that crit matters. I don't know. I mean, we are, like, modest here on Kyogre rather than timid, but Lunala's ultra bulky as a Pokemon. This is modest, like, 236, right? But, yeah, I think that turn was a little suboptimal on my end because I wasn't sure about the calc on Lunala, and I just assumed it would KO, but it's way better to just max the Kyogre and just Geyser into Lunala. It also covers for Wide Guard. I don't think I need to be that greedy with my max here. The thing is, I think even if they get Trick Room up there, I'm still in okay position because the Lunala's at really low HP. You don't have Dynamax. I still have it max yet. And then I get Landorus for Intimidate, plus Landorus as a Assault Vest. So I think we win the game anyway, but I think there's little reason to not max Kyogre there, because even if you protect it, I don't care, right? I just need to keep clicking Geyser to power through. So, yeah. Like, it's just a slightly suboptimal play that, like, I could have covered for in the endgame anyway, but it's better to just play optimally, right? So, we just max Geyser now and go for U-turn for free damage. But I think a lot about this game was Zacian applying so much pressure to Venusaur, and a lot about playing around Venusaur is figuring out how turn 1 plays out, right? Because I want to cover for Sleep Powder, but I also want to see whether or not they consider Dynamaxing, and they did consider, like, they did just go for the max immediately. So as soon as you commit the Dynamax, I can leverage that to my advantage, and then I don't have to be as scared about you just clicking Sleep Powder. That's why I didn't want to max on turn 1, because the odds of them, like, switching into Groudon and just going for Sleep Powder into something immediately is really scary, right? I don't want to max something, just get put to sleep immediately. Plus, Landorus was intimidated to start the game. So yeah, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. If you enjoyed, please share support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. Hopefully, Torkoal can come out in some battles tomorrow. I feel like it just, yeah, it didn't make too much sense in most of the matchups today, other than maybe the first one against Zacian Kyogre, but as you saw, we didn't really need it given how strong Kyogre itself was into that matchup. So yeah, I think this is a really, really strong team. I mean, of course, it features some of the strongest Pokemon and sets in the format, but it's been a while actually since we've used dual weather, and you know, the Venusaur concept with Kyogre and Tornadus I think is really interesting, and not that many players actually use it, right? So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.